Today's topic is 13.1, fractions as multiples of unit fraction. The objective for today is that I will use unit fractions and multiplication to describe fractions that are multiples of the unit fractions. The first problem we're looking at says Kara and Sarah were working on their math homework. Kara had written a description of 3/4 as 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4. And Sarah looked at it and said, I think you could use multiplication there. Remember how we learned that 2 plus 2 plus 2 is 2 times 3? Wouldn't it make sense that 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 would be 3 times 1/4? What do you think about Sarah's observation? Based on this problem, we can see that it makes sense what Sarah's saying. Because if I have 1/4 and another 1/4 and another 1/4, that would be the same thing as having 3 parts of the same fraction. So I could use multiplication to do 3 times 1/4. In your notes, I want you to go ahead and draw these visuals. When I look at these visuals, I have 3/4 showing 3 times 1/4, just like we were just talking about. So I've drawn out my bar right here that's separated into 4 sections. Each one of these represents 1/4. So I have to look at my total. I have 1/4. And then if I look at the total of these two, I have 2/4. Total of these 3 would be my 3/4. Another visual of showing that would be what I have right here. So I've got 1/4. I have 3 different sets of 1/4 that all equal 3 times 1/4. Well, again, the total would end up being 3/4. So either way, my answer would end up being 3/4. And that's what we're going to take a look at today. In your notes, you need to include this vocabulary. A unit fraction is a fraction that describes one part of the whole. Unit fractions always have a numerator of 1. So looking at this bar we have down here, just like we were looking at what we just drew, for my one whole would be 4/4, but each part is a unit fraction, so one piece of that whole. So we're going to look at how I might solve each one of these. When I'm multiplying times a unit fraction, it's always one part of whatever the fraction is. So in this one, if I'm looking at 2/3, the numerator tells me my whole number that I'd multiply 2 times 1/3. 1/3 is the unit fraction because it's one piece of thirds. So this time, I could multiply 5 times 1/6. My denominator piece would not change in the fraction part of my unit fraction. Reminder that all unit fractions have a 1 in the numerator because they're one piece of the whole. So this one, 3/2 would be 3 times 1/2. 6/5 would be 6 times 1/5. In your notes, I would like you to go ahead and give these 4 a try based on what we just talked about. All unit fractions are one piece of the whole. If you're not sure, then go back and try it again.